Can you tell me a little bit about, and again, I'm going to butcher it pronunciation-wise, but the Hiraeth, or the longing, it seems like an eternity
good. You've got it right,
in your heart. That eternity, it seems to me it's like an eternity in your heart of longing. And why has Wales had, 8,000 square miles, seem to have more outpourings than any other 8,000 square mile spot? California's had a lot of revival.
Yes.
We've had a lot that have impacted the world, but nowhere close to how many, for 8,000 square miles, it's probably the most outpoured geography in the world. So I'd love you to talk about that, and also that longing for home, that yearning that is in the Welsh. Is that something that the Holy Spirit touches and uses as a bridge to himself? And then I'd love to close with you just blessing creatives.
Yeah. I think it's a great word. Hiraeth is a great word.
You're right.
It is longing for your nation.
Yeah.
And during the COVID, I've been unable to go back. I go back once or twice a year. I was supposed to be lecturing in the Bible College of Wales. That's, couldn't do it. Go back to see my friends, talk about what's happening in Wales. So I have that Hiraeth to go back to Wales. One of the things it's funny, because you asked in your thing about the 17 revivals, I'd never heard that before, so I picked up two of the main revival histories of Wales. This one here, Llaw lyfr ar hanes diwygiadau crefyddol yng Nghymru, Ed Paris, all in Welsh, untranslated. This came out in 1898, fascinating time, and talked about all different revivals. And this diwygiadau crefyddol Cymru, which is again not translated, by Henry Hughes, which was written in the Welsh revival of 1904 while it was happening. It's utterly fascinating, whatever. And as I read some of these, just to remind myself of one or two things, I was just deeply moved. Once again, as I read it in the Welsh language, as I remember that God invaded our land time and time again, beginning early on. I always recommend that people begin with the age of the saints. We don't know much about that, but they set the foundation with the age of the saints. So all we've got left is some Celtic crosses, which are gorgeous, by the way, they're gorgeous, and some medieval lives, which have some truth, but lots of mystery. But they did something. They really did something which is lost, not to God, but to history. Then you get medieval Wales, which there's great stories of literature there. The monastic movement could be very positive in certain places, without a doubt, especially the Cistercians. And then you move on to the Reformation in Wales. Not much happened to the people didn't want the Reformation in Wales. But what did happen was William Salisbury and William Morgan translate the Bible into Welsh. So even though nothing was happening on the outside, that foundation was being laid, which was really to totally influence the rest of Wales. Then the Puritan movement with three or four key preachers who touched parts of Wales. And then comes, of course, the Methodist revival. And we've talked about the other things from there on. And as I look at the history of Wales, I want to build on what other people have done. I don't want to ignore what other people, I want to build, but I can't build exactly the same thing. So what William Morgan did, incredibly creatively, by the way, because like Luther, the Bible that Luther translated into German became the German language.
Wow.
So the Bible was part of the German language. It held it together in the same way that Shakespeare in English did that with the most read Bible in the King James version of 1611. And the Welsh Bible did New Testament 1560 something 3 and the other in 1588. All these different things. So it's really important, I think, to know what God has done, to enjoy what God has done in the past. And I read about that on a regular basis, and it brings my Hiraeth out. I read Welsh novels of the period. And you know, it moves my heart and touches me and creates a longing within me. And there was a great creativity in the 19th century, where Daniel Owen, one of the great novelists, he was regarded as the Welsh Dickens. He was better than Dickens, I think so. You can't translate his novels, waste of time. Don't bother reading them. But they're in Welsh and they whatever. But he captures the second part of 19th century Wales. And when I read that, there are tears in my eyes every time. I cry as I read the descriptions of these people of God who lived at that time. And he writes incredibly well and with passion and without harshness. Without harshness or criticism. His critique is just small, but because he loves what is happening. So
Luther said, whenever we critique the church, it should always be with a sob in our voice.
Yes.
A previous time, a better previous time. The sob of the sob of
and he does that at the time, and it's very warm. So this Hiraeth is there. I read Welsh biographies. I have a very large collection of Welsh ministerial biographies of the 19th century. Maybe 200-300, maybe a few more. I've collected over the last 40 years. And every now and again, I like just to read one of them, just slowly, knowing what they went through, the battles they fought. And I find myself, you know, I'm like them, they're like me. And that brings a Hiraeth to me, to see my Welsh nation come back to the Lord in a powerful way. And in a creative way. So let me sum up the creativity before I pray. And the creativity is this: God used Christianity in a very creative way. Right in the beginning, in art, with the Celtic crosses. When you look at, I have a Celtic cross on my desk in my office thing, hand carved for me. It's gorgeous. Art was big when it comes to Celtic, the early Celtic creativity there, and you know, and in the monastic movement as well. When it came to the revival of 18th century revival, creativity is seen in the music, all right, and in how to do things, in bringing small groups together, creatively working and doing things like that. By the time you get to the 19th century, it's writing. The whole thing of writing, the publishing. Wales becomes a literate nation with its journals and newspapers telling us this poetry. So it's not strong on art and painting. I've got to say that. Not strong on art and painting. But it is on all the other things. And God used those things to influence that nation. The nation of Wales. You come to the 20th century, and then much of that translates into that. So creativity and God come together. I'm doing a series beginning not this Sunday, but the Sunday after, on the Imago Dei, the image of God. And part of the image of God in man is to be creative. God, the creator, gives us creativity. And whatever that might mean, whether it's doing a moth stand-up, you know, which I love, whether it's writing a book, a poet, doing a poetry evening, whether it's painting, whether it's preaching in a way that is winsome and bringing, all that is creative, all of it.
I loved your comment about the rotting corpse of a dull sermon.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
you said that on the last interview.
Oh, yeah. Because my area is preaching, and that's what I've done. The worst thing you can have, the greatest heresy, as I often say, is that the truth is preached in a boring manner, because that puts people off the truth. I don't mind if heresy is preached boringly, because it won't get anywhere. But when the truth is preached boringly, that's awful. That's just awful.
True.
So one of my passions is to at least get people to speak with interest.